for that, we are hosting this Fireside chat today, and with us are going to be Alix from Legalpad. So please welcome Alix, everyone. And we have Jessica from Legalpad. So Jessica and Alix are going to be having a conversation about US immigration. Most of you submitted questions, so we're going to be asking those questions and answering those questions. If you have some questions, we're going to open the floor for Q&A at the end, and feel free to ask questions. And their team is going to be here, and they have a sign-up desk on the other side of the hall. And we also have a QR code over there on that screen, the black screen in front of the bar. So if any of you have any questions or want a free consultation with Legalpad, feel free to scan that code, sign up a meeting, and yeah, I guess welcome to America. All right, over to Jessica and Alix.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess. I work in customer marketing at Legalpad. I've been there for a little over 2.5 years now. I guess it's now a deal. So it's very, very exciting. We're growing very fast. And so tonight I'm going to ask the questions to Alix that you've asked us, and then we'll open it up to the floor for more questions that you have. And I'll let Alix introduce herself first.
Hi, so exciting.
Oh, no.
It's so exciting to have all of you guys here. I'm so happy to see so many faces. My name is Alix Cayce. I've worked with Legalpad for over 2 years now. I run our sales department, and I have had thousands of conversations with international founders from every different background, with every different focus for their business. So I'm very hopeful that I can answer all of your questions, especially the ones that I won't have seen yet. The one thing I do want to mention is I am not an attorney, so anything that I say should not be taken as legal advice. If you do want to schedule a meeting with us, we can go ahead and get you in front of an attorney if you have, legal advice type of questions, but please just keep that in mind. I'm not advising you. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and if you go ahead and sign up, just ask questions, or if you want to book a call with us, you'll be entered in a raffle to win $500 in cash or $1,000 towards your visa with Legalpad when you sign with us. So pretty exciting stuff. All right, let's see if Alix can do this. So first question. I'm excited. Obviously do not. I just incorporated my company in Delaware, and I'm in the US on a B visa that will expire October 3rd. What should I do to make it easier to visit the US often and earn a salary from my company, etc.? I'm also curious about the O2 visa and whether options work, and what immigration hacks you have. Three-parter.
So this is a question that comes up very frequently, where a founder is in the US on a B visa, which is a tourist visa for those of you who don't know. You only have eligibility to be here for 6 months, a maximum of a year, and you cannot actually work for your business on a B. So you can engage in passive work activities, but nothing that really gets into the nitty-gritty. For founders in that position, we most often recommend an O1 visa, not the O2. The O2 visa is actually meant for your secretary that you can't live without. It's the person accompanying the O1. The O1 is an extraordinary abilities visa type, and it works very well for founders because we can use things like raising capital from well-known VCs, or participating in accelerators, or getting press about yourself as qualifying standards for that visa type. So I would say that is hands down the most popular visa that we service, although we do handle all employment-based visa categories. But what we recommend for this person is to try for an O1 if they qualify, and that will give them the ability to draw a salary from their company in the US, come and go as much as you want, have your family here. So there's a multitude of benefits to an O1 for a founder.
Extendable indefinitely.
Yeah.
All right, next question. I lost my OPT in May. Do I need to reinstate?
Yeah. So OPT is optional practical training, and that is a option for students who want to work while they're students or after they finish their degree. It's for STEM specifically. OPT is its own beast. Your university will advise you on, your options there, but with each different degree, you're granted a varying different length of how much OPT you get. So if you're eligible for an extension and you want to keep working while you're in the US, I would definitely recommend renewing. Otherwise, you need to pursue some other status that will give you work authorization. So if you have the option for OPT, I say take it, but it's ultimately up to you.
Very good. Does the size of my startup impact my chances of getting a visa?
No, not at all, which is actually a really cool thing. Part of the reason Legalpad exists is because US immigration is so heavily catered towards large companies. It's much more straightforward. All of the USCIS website information is meant for large companies to be looking at. So we really wanted to kind of detangle immigration for smaller companies, and sometimes that company is literally one person. The requirement is that your company is incorporated in the US, and that we can show a qualifying employee-employer relationship. So if you own 50% or more of your own company, we are going to ask that you have a board of at least 2 people. Doesn't matter who those people are. It can be your mom if you want. But they need to have the right to hire, fire, pay, supervise, or otherwise control your work. And that shows the Immigration Service that you're not self-sponsoring, but it will allow you to have a one-person company that you're coming here to grow and work for. So size is not an issue here.
That's great. So I'm going to keep rolling with these, but if any of you have any questions at all, just raise your hand and we can speak to your question. Just let us know. Yeah, absolutely. It's more fun that way. How long do I have to wait before I can apply for a green card after entering the US?
You do not. So it really just depends on whether or not you qualify. Again, please book a call with us. We'll be happy to go through your case in detail. But if you qualify for a green card path, you can get started right away. The reality is that you're not going to have, work authorization and the travel authorization associated with that green card for probably, 8 months to a year. But you can get started on the process straight away. So there's no real need to wait if you're qualified. It's something we do all the time for our founders. They get to the US and turn right back around and go for their green card.
Especially if you're on the LPT, why not? All right. I'd like to, wait, I already did that one. Why should I apply for a visa instead of going for a green card directly?
Yeah, this is a question we get all the time because everybody wants to be as fast as possible, so why not go the direct route? When you go for a green card from outside the US, it can take 1 to 2 years, and during that period, they will advise you against entering the US. If you were to enter the US as a tourist, the intent of a tourist visa is not to immigrate. So you would be violating the intent of that visa, and it would not be good. So we would advise you to wait outside the US until you have the green card. So for some people, that is a totally viable option, and in those cases, we're happy to help. But for most of our founders, it's really important for them to get to the US and to be able to work here, or employees, or whatever you might be. You want to be here as soon as possible. So we usually recommend get your non-immigrant visa so you have valid underlying status, and then come to the US and pursue your green card from here, because it's a predictable timeline. So when you file for the I-485, which is the adjustment of status to permanent resident, you're going to get the work authorization and travel documents within about 6 to 9 months. So okay, I only need to budget that amount of time to stay in the US instead of a year, 2 years. I don't know how long I'm going to be stuck outside the US. So it just comes down to your priorities, and we can help you determine what makes the most sense, but that's typically what we recommend.
What happens to my O1 if I leave my company or my company goes under?
Yeah, well, you'll lose your O1, is the simple answer there. You need to have a sponsor. So any employment-based visa category in the non-immigrant side has to be sponsored by a company. So if you leave that company or the company no longer exists, the visa is going to be nullified and you'll need to leave the country. Alternatively, if you're ahead of the game, you can file for a new O1 with a new company. So you can either change employers, so get rid of the old O1, get a new one, or you can file for a concurrent O1. So you would have both at the same time, and that might ease the transition into your new company a little bit better. You can maintain them both, or you can then, let the other one expire if you want to, but the O is pretty cool in that you can have multiple at the same time.
Very cool. Okay. How can I work for my own company or someone else in OPT or an H-1B?
Yeah. The first time I ever got this question, I was a little bit mystified because it is a very difficult situation. And it was a founder from San Francisco who said, in San Francisco, everyone talks about how easy it is to form your own company when you're on an H-1B with someone else. And it's not. It's actually very challenging. So if you've gone through this, you know that when you're on an H-1B with another company, you cannot be legally working for a different company. We're going to come back over and over again to the concept of passive versus active work activities. The USCIS does distinguish between the two. So passive work activities are things like going through an accelerator or incubator, raising funds, attending board meetings, kind of high level, not really in the nitty-gritty day-to-day, versus active activities, which are that day-to-day work. You're generating revenue, you're signing client contracts, you're progressing your business forward in a really active way. You can do those passive work activities without work authorization. So you can go to your accelerator even though you're on an H-1B. You can raise funds. You can kind of get yourself to a position where it's a viable option to transfer your work authorization to your own company. And oftentimes what we see is that at that point, you'll transfer your H-1B from your current sponsor to your own company, which sounds terrible because if you're on an H-1B, you know that there's a minimum wage requirement. You are going to have to pay yourself that minimum wage requirement for a short period of time until you get to the point where you qualify for the O1. And then you can switch to an O1, which has no minimum wage requirement, and you can sort of balance the sheets, if you will, to make sure that you haven't way overpaid yourself as a founder over the course of your first year. So that's often the path that we recommend is an H-1B transfer to an O1, and just make sure you're passively working only while you're with your current sponsor.
It's very important. We get that one a lot.
Yeah. To add on to that, the biggest mistake we see is that people get press naming them as the CEO or CFO of the company that's not sponsoring their visa. This is a very bad idea. So don't do that. If you're trying to make that transition.
Now another one, if you're trying to start your company here, you still have an international location or business, and that you stayed on LinkedIn that your company is actively in San Francisco or somewhere else, we advise you not to do that. All right, next question. Do I have to pay taxes in the US if I'm on a temporary work visa?
Yes. If you live and work in the US, you're paying taxes here. So simple answer. If you're concerned about reporting internationally earned income and things like that, we would always recommend you talk to a CPA or a tax attorney to answer those questions. But simple answer is if you're here, you're paying taxes like the rest of us. So.
Important. Why does an angel funding or crowdfunding count as an award?
So for context, in the extraordinary abilities visa categories, so the O1 and the EB-1A for the green card path, there's 8 criteria that the Immigration Service uses to evaluate whether or not you have an extraordinary ability in your field. Legalpad really pioneered manipulating those criteria for startup founders. And one of the ways that we did that was by using VC funding as an award. This is a very non-traditional argument, but really what they're looking for is for us to prove that you've been the recipient of nationally or internationally recognized awards that are extremely selective and highly competitive. And as most of you probably know, if you seek funding, it's extremely competitive and highly selective. So, we're looking at VCs that have a proven track record of making successful investments in early stage startups, showing how selective they are in making those investments, and that typically allows us to make a good argument for awards. The issue is that angel investment could be anybody. It could just be, your rich uncle or some random person who likes your industry. It could be anything. So there's no ability for us to say, this is highly selective when it comes from just an individual person. There needs to be that kind of structure and framework around it of consistency that we can prove.
I'm kind of going to add on to that one before I move on. So versus the O1 where VC funding is looked at, we can use it as an award. How about if for the EB1?
Yeah, that's a great distinction. The O1 has a slightly lower standard when it comes to kind of these non-traditional arguments is how we categorize them. So examples are VC funding as awards, incubators and accelerators as memberships. The EB1A, on the other hand, has a much higher standard, so they do want to see those more traditional arguments. So they want what you would typically classify as an award, like a Pulitzer or something like that. They want to see more traditional membership. So oftentimes when we're looking at transitioning someone from an O1 to an EB1A, we're actually looking at the criteria like critical role. So are you critically employed with a company that has a distinguished reputation in its field? Original contribution, have you contributed something of high significance to your field? And high remuneration, so are you making within the top 10% of industry professionals in your field, in your region? And oftentimes, once you guys get your O1 and you start seeing success and traction with that, we're able to make those latter arguments for the EB1 that are more traditional and more widely accepted.
Does any visa let me work for multiple companies?
No. Another simple answer. Nope. The best option is you can either have, multiple O1s, like 2, or you can have 2 H1Bs. So those are the 2 categories that allow for that. The L's, the E's, those are gonna be just one company.
When can I start working if I transfer my H1B?
Yeah. So when you transfer your H1B, you can technically start working for the new company upon receipt. So the USCIS will issue a notice of receipt, usually a couple days after we file. However, if it gets denied, you're in a bit of a pickle because your old company's probably not going to take you back. So we often recommend that you pay for premium processing, which will guarantee you a response within 15 calendar days, and then make the move once you know that transfer has been approved. Most likely it will be, but on the off chance it would be a real shame to end up in a situation where you have to find a new sponsor.
What happens if my case is denied?
We can try again. Yeah, there's no way to really overturn a denial, so we can take another shot. Specifically with O1s, the immigration service can be extremely fickle. So we do very well with them. We have a 97% approval rate, but it happens. We'll get a random denial on what we look at as a highly qualified case, and we'll try again. We'll just resubmit, put it on somebody else's desk, and typically that works out.
What happens if my case is RFE?
So an RFE is a request for evidence. We'll respond and hopefully get an approval. We have 90 days to do that. So, yeah.
It's just something like a little longer waiting.
Yeah.
It does not mean you're denied.
Yeah.
How do I avoid a new office L1?
Okay, quick question. Do any of you have established companies abroad with employees? Okay, yeah, okay, a couple of you. So the L1 is an intra-company executive or manager transferee visa. And it's for companies that are established abroad that have staff, they're fully operational, and they're wanting to transfer employees to the US. Amazon, Google, they do a lot of L's. A new Office L would be issued to someone who has no established business in the US, but they want to transfer an executive over. So the way you can avoid it is to establish your business here. So hire some staff, start doing substantial business in the US, which you can show through revenue. They want to see that you have an office space that your staff is working out of, that you've been renting for about 6 months is what they like to see. The reason you'd want to avoid a new office is that it's only issued for a year, and you have to renew before that year comes up, and you're going to have to hit very strict milestones. So let's say that it takes you 3 months to get here after your approval. You have to file, start work about 3 months before the expiration. That gives you, 6 months to meet these milestones. It can be extremely difficult. So if we can help a company get to the point where they're established enough in the US to avoid that new office L, it ends up being cheaper and oftentimes a much better option to just kind of wait until you qualify for the standard L1.
Good. Okay, last question here. Can I sponsor my own visa?
No. A lot of no's here, sorry guys. No, you can't. If you have a company, your company can sponsor it like we talked about, but especially for entrepreneurs, this is actually a super frustrating point. People want to have the ability to just be an entrepreneur and try different things and work within their field. You just don't have that option until you get a green card. So the two options that do come to mind though are the EB-1A and the EB-2 National Interest Waiver green card paths. You can self-sponsor those. So if you get to the US on a non-immigrant visa and you're committed to your field, then we can talk about giving you more flexibility through that green card.
Very good. So does anyone else have any more questions?
I have one. Are there any advantages in getting a visa or a green card for people who have one parent who's an American citizen or not?
It's a very good question. So in case anybody didn't hear, he asked if there's advantages to getting a non-immigrant visa if you have a US citizen parent. It just depends on if you want to go through the process, to get citizenship through that. I will say we don't do family law. Ahmed, will you stick your hand up? He's over there. Ahmed Musa, our team member, he actually worked for a firm that did practice family law, so he would be a great person to talk to about, what the workload is to do that, what the timeline is. Oftentimes getting an employment-based non-immigrant visa can be faster and just more straightforward than pursuing the family sponsorship paths, but it's case by case. So yeah, I would track him down and ask him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Over there?
Yeah. What about E2 visas? What are the pros and cons?
About E2?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the E2 is an investor visa, and so what they want to see is that you've invested a substantial amount of personal funds into your business in the US. E2s are only eligible for individuals who are citizens of countries that have an E2 treaty, so not every country is eligible. And they'll want to see that that company is owned at least 50% by nationals of the treaty country. When I say substantial, they're typically looking for an kind of $80,000 to $100,000 investment, and they are going to look for the source of those funds. So they're going to want to see the paper trail of exactly how that money came from you to the business. Obviously, they're looking for stopovers or anyone else contributing to it. It's a wonderful visa category if that's an option for you. It'll allow you status for up to 5 years, and then you can tack on an extra 2 at the end if you don't plan to travel. Your family can work, so the dependents have work authorization. The major downside for entrepreneurs is that they do require that 50% ownership by nationals of the treaty country. So if you're, looking for U.S. investment or investment from, citizens of other countries, and you dilute to below 50% treaty national ownership, the visa will be nullified. So that's where we see people moving from the E2 to the O1 or to a different green card path at a later date. They just diluted to below their ownership.
Can we talk a little bit about the refugee status? Because there's a lot of people at this moment, are being displaced from Ukraine, Russia, from Belarus, from other countries. And some of them come here on a tourist visa, and then they cannot work, right?
Yeah.
So what are their options? What refugee status gives them as an option? Or I know there is some new thing that came out for Ukrainian citizens, like a faster processing or work authorization. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
I really wish I could. I don't know enough about it to give really an educated answer. Of course, all of the standard like work authorization options are going to be there, so an O or an H-1B when the season comes. But when it comes to asylum and kind of like the new options that are being made available, I don't have enough personal knowledge to comment on that. If you have someone who has a case like that, there are attorneys that specialize in exactly
Your
that.
company?
Not in our company. So we're solely employment based. So that we can recommend you to someone if you, just grab my LinkedIn afterwards so we can refer you out. Just speak up.
Yeah, go ahead.
You talked about 8 criteria. So the criteria should be in same field, like only one field or different field. As I personally talked to you about, I'm authorized, so even I have climbed Mount Everest and already accepted in a 500 startup. So
Yeah.
these are like not connected with each other.
Yeah, that is such a good question. So we do work with a lot of people who are very, very impressive. And they have all of these different accolades across different fields. Unfortunately, the Immigration Service doesn't care. So they're a little bit cold-hearted. They do want to see that you have an extraordinary ability in your specific field. And so the first part of the petition is that we actually need to define that field and then show how those criteria align to it. So, unfortunately, it's not going to help. Yeah.
The good thing is you can be a little broad with the field, like entrepreneurship, technology.
Yeah, and so that is for a lot of our tech founders. We've defined the field as technology entrepreneurship, and then maybe you were in biotech, and then you're in fintech, kind of like sampling. But those are all kind of within that same general field. So unfortunately, mountaineering and entrepreneurialism will not fall into the same category.
So I can only focus on just 500 startup as an accelerator, and then I can go with that path.
Exactly, yeah. So you can use 500 startups to help you meet the membership criteria. And we were looking at raising VC funds that would help you with awards. And maybe if you get some press around your fundraise, that could help you with press.
Yes.
So you're on your way with 500 startups. They're a great.
Yeah.
Can I? Yeah. So what if you have a startup incorporated here, but you're on F1 visa?
Okay.
So can you have a path to?
Yeah. Are you eligible for OPT?
Yeah.
Okay. So depending on your university, some of them will allow you to use your OPT to work for your own company.
Oh.
You need to talk to them, but usually what we recommend asking is if you have a U.S. citizen co-founder, or if you have the board arrangement I was saying, where you set up a board and they can hire, fire, all of that. Then can you work for your own startup on OPT? If you can, that's a great option. Otherwise, you need to kind of use those passive work activities to get to the point that you're qualified for the O. So like I said before, things like accelerators, raising funding, and all of the other criteria to look at, that can help you get there. But unfortunately, without either OPT or the non-immigrant work visa, you can't actively work. So there wouldn't be an option just with F1 alone.
Okay.
I'm currently working on the H-1B visa, and it is better if I try to get O1 or ask the employer to get green card.
Yeah.
Which is better.
So you're currently on an H-1B?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your country of origin?
Japan.
Japan? Okay. Well, it really depends. So if you want your employer to sponsor your green card, are you an engineer or?
Yeah, I'm robotics engineer.
Yeah, okay. So most likely you would be an EB2 perm, which is what most people go for their green card. It's for specialty occupations, and it'll take you through a 1-year labor certification where your company is required to try to hire for your role and prove that there's no qualified U.S. citizen, and then they can pursue a green card for you based on that. The downside of that is that it does tie you to your company for an extended amount of time. So you're looking at 2 years maybe that you would be pretty much stuck working for that same company. If that's okay with you, then that's a great option, and that's what most people do. But if you're wanting to branch off on your own and pursue your own, work authorization, it would be a good idea to try to qualify for the O, and then, through that process, you'll get closer and closer to potentially an EB1A, or more often than not, we're looking at an EB2 national interest waiver. If we can show that the work you're doing is of inherent merit to the U.S. national economy and welfare, and that there's an urgent need for it now, most early stage startup founders are addressing some pressing need. So there's usually an argument that we can make there that would allow you to self-sponsor and therefore not be stuck with your company and have flexibility to move around.
Question?
In the corner?
I'm currently on the J1 from Canada, and I'm currently a contractor for my company. I'm wondering if for my next visa I can be an employee or I can remain a contractor to pursue my next visa.
Yeah. You're going to have to be an employee, so I'm trying to think that one through. J1s are an interesting visa category. You may have a 2-year home residency requirement. Do you know if you do?
I don't know.
Okay. So sometimes J1s come with a 2-year home residency requirement because the idea is that whoever paid for that sponsorship essentially wants you to come back to your home country and apply everything you learned here in the US on your J1. That doesn't have to be served consecutively, so it can be served over a number of years. But you need to be aware of that because, for example, you can't get an H-1B if you have that 2-year pending, but you can get an O-1. So you need to pick your visa category kind of purposefully. You may not have it though, so I would reach out and talk to your attorney who did the J1 for you. If you don't have that, then you can go for anything. The question though, you can't be a contractor. You have to be a full-time employee.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes?
If we have to show investment as an award, so it should be like seed funding, angel investing, or VC. And what is like our award, like investment amount?
Yeah.
It should be from like a reputed VC fund, or it can be from individuals.
So that's the distinction we made earlier between VC funding and angel funding. We would want it to be from a VC fund if we're going to use it from an institutional investor of some sort, if we're going to use it for the awards criteria. There is no regulation or guidelines around this. This is just purely based on the O's that we filed. We filed almost 500 at this point successfully. About 500,000 or more tends to be a winnable awards criteria. Anything less puts us in a little bit less of a confident place filing for that. Over here.
I also have a G1 visa, and I'm wondering from like question of like H1B or O1. So like which order it gets, and what would you advise me?
Yeah. It really depends on your case. The H-1B is difficult because it's lottery based. So best case scenario, if you're pursuing an H-1B, you're not going to begin your work until October 1st of 2023. So that's something to keep in mind. It really depends. If you have that 2-year home residency requirement, you're going to want to go for the O, or serve that 2-year requirement. The one benefit that people really like about the O is that it doesn't have a cap on it. So it's eligible for 3 years, but then you can continue to get O's over and over and over again. So you could theoretically be on O for your whole life. Whereas the H-1B is going to cap out at 6 years if you don't have an approved I-140, which is the step to a green card. So it kind of depends on your plans. And then the other nice thing is that if you are an entrepreneur and you're wanting to work for your own company, the H does have a minimum salary requirement that's usually quite high by entrepreneur standards. The O does not, so you can pay yourself a fairly moderate wage that investors prefer to see.
As an entrepreneur who fits like minimum number of criteria for O1, what's the acceptance rate for O1 O1 versus a direct green card market?
Yeah, you don't need to have an O1 first. So like if you were qualified for the EB1A, for example, you could go straight for the EB1A in theory, but you want to make sure that you have an underlying status, because if you adjust status from inside the US, it's easier, like we talked about earlier. So you could go from like an H1B to an EB1A. There's no need to hop over to an O. But the O, this is an oversimplification, but I often say that the O is looking for the top 10% of people in your field, and the EB1A is looking for the top 1%. So our approval rate on O's is extremely high. EB1A's, the national approval rate is about 40%. Ours is 70%, but it's a much more difficult position to get approved. Are we out of time? Okay. Let's call it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for an amazing chat. I remember like when I went through my immigration process, I like studied it so much. I like, when you were talking, I was like, yes, check mark. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, all the information that you received here was correct. Like even if you're not a legal attorney, it was correct. So yeah, thank you so much for hosting such a nice fireside chat. And of course, they're going to be here, and we have Ahmed also from, can you wave? Yeah. Yeah, from the team here, they're going to be here for another 2 to 3 hours. And also we have a QR code here. Feel free to scan it to sign up for a free consultation. We also have a sign-up desk of a Legalpad. So feel free to ask as many questions. And we're just resuming back to networking. We're going to be moving the chairs around. And yeah, just let's get back to networking. Thank you so much, everyone.